Hello. My name is Kim Addis, and I am the president and founder of Frame of Mind Coaching. And you have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast, where we invite willing leaders from all walks of life to come onto the show and get coached live and in person. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Sarah Baldeo. She's the CEO of ID Quotient Advisory Group, and she's here in Toronto. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for having me.
So I'm catching you in the middle of a super busy day. Give us a sense for what's happening in your day today.
So I just got off the phone with two of my attorneys. One is in California, one is in New York, to discuss all the elements of holding escrow for $2 billion transactions for international trade to support some U.S. government clients who need medical supplies. So it is a very hectic conversation to have, and lots of money moving hands internationally. So attorneys are always fun to talk to.
Okay, so explain to us, what is ID Quotient Advisory Group? What does that even mean? Yeah. Say it in layman's terms.
In layman terms. So a quotient is actually a mathematical term. And the elements of the firm, there's actually a group of 7 companies, but it really falls into 3 different buckets. So there is our digital advisory and risk algorithm design group. So we consult on digital identity verification, artificial intelligence, talking about risk algorithms, and we do a lot of that in the public sector with state GSAs and ministries here in Canada. Then there's the segment of the company that focuses on medical supply and medical audits. So one of my degrees is a neuroscience degree. I spent lots of times in labs prior to the pandemic and early on in my career. So had those relationships strong early on in my journey. So we have strong relationships with manufacturers internationally, and we do a lot of international trade work. So COVID has been a very busy time for us. And then we'll do medical efficacy audits for our government and hospital clients to make sure that what they're purchasing meets our licensing requirements here with Health Canada and with the US Health Authority. And then the third branch of our business is all to do with logistics and transport. So we have our own US customs bond. We do import medical devices, medical products, medical supplies into the US and Canada and internationally. So it's a busy time.
So you have a lot of things going on.
Yes.
You have a lot of balls in the air. And it sounds like, just even as you're describing this, like you're not in an industry that's easily accessible to the vast majority of the population. You're in a very, very specialized field requiring a fair level of expertise. What else is going on in your world?
So as I had shared with you, Kim, when we first chatted, I'm a single mom, so I'm divorced, and I have I don't talk about it often, but I have sole custody of my 9-year-old. So for our family, we decided, we're gonna do virtual school. So the first month of school, there was no virtual teachers, and mom was the virtual teacher. So it was get up at 5 a.m., hop on calls with people that I have in Kuala Lumpur and my staff in Jakarta, have a conversation with them, what's going on at the ports, then draft a lesson plan for my 9-year-old. And then I do sit on several boards, but one of the boards I sit on, which is the Professional Background Screening Association, I'm the chairwoman. So there's a lot of work that goes with that. And I am just right in the thick of my executive MBA at University of Toronto at Rotman. So those are the things that are typically going on in a regular day.
So you run a 3-pronged business. You're a single mom. You sit on boards. You're the chairwoman of one of those boards. And on top of that, you're doing your executive MBA.
I think that's all the things, but I'm not sure. There might be one other thing. I don't know. There's always moving.
Are you dating anyone?
I am dating. So I find time.
Dating one specific person, or are you dating? Okay.
I'm a one at one. It's going really well. We're both CEOs, which is nice. And he owns his own companies. We actually met through the medical supply space. So that's how we met. And then he runs 6 different companies in Canada, the US, Singapore. So it's a busy time for
Okay.
both.
So it's a bit of a facetious question, but what's your greatest challenge?
Time. Definitely finding time. And I get sometimes asked this question. We do a lot of like mentorship interviews, or sometimes I'll do speaker engagements as well in my free time. And one of the questions is, what's your greatest weakness? I will take on everything. If someone comes and says, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce came and said, hey, can you talk about international trade, women in trade and force majeure during a pandemic? I said, sure, I have time for that. Let's do that. So admittedly, I will always say yes, and then try to figure out how to find the time to piece things together.
Okay. So great. You made it easy for me to start asking you some questions. Why do you always say yes? Why do you take on everything? Like, what's that really about?
I think, because of my background in neuroscience, I psychoanalyze myself every day, which is sometimes not a good thing. But I think it really just has to do with wanting to be a perfectionist. And I talked about this in my executive MBA course with some other female leaders. And one of the other women who's in policy with the Ministry of Finance, she said, you want to be perfect. You want to be impermeable. I am just invincible. I have it all together. I can handle everything. I can be a mom. I can be a girlfriend, be a chairwoman. And yeah, I never falter. So I think it's that desire to have that persona of just, I've got it all together. I don't have any issues keeping it all together, and I can take on anything. So I think that's what it stems from.
Okay, but so go a little step further. So with your neuroscience degree, let's just go a little deeper. Mm-hmm. Why? So what is the drive for perfection? What is the drive for feeling like, seeming like, looking like you have everything in order and you can handle this massive load?
If I had to kind of delve into the psychology of it, which my own therapist tells me I shouldn't do. It's really, it comes from, when you're growing up. So my background, I'm mixed, but I'm Caribbean and South American. My parents were immigrants. My dad worked in procurement for his entire career. My mom was a professor at George Brown. And she also taught at U of T. And I think one of the things that I grew up with, I was an only child, was you have to be perfect. You have to get the perfect grades. You've got to be the valedictorian. You've got to get scholarships. You need to be 1,000 times better than everybody else, even to your own expectations, Sarah, and just surpass even your own expectations. So definitely a lot of the leaders that I talk to, or my peers, they say it comes from your childhood. And we're all kind of.
So let me ask you a few interesting questions.
Sure.
Did you do all those things? Were you the valedictorian? Did you exceed all expectations? Were you the apple of your parents' eye?
I will freely say that, I was the valedictorian and on the honor roll and running all the clubs and in band and going to Royal Conservatory of Music downtown and doing all these things. And in my family, it was perfect is never enough. So it's, and I do thank my parents, and I tell them this today, thank you for pushing me beyond even my own expectations and giving me that ambition and drive. But it's one of those things where, you do step back and part of the women's business enterprises conversation I've had with other individuals who are weebies is you don't have to be perfect. And it is like, you are a human being, and it's not a positive thing if you say yes to everything and then fail at everything. Or worse, if your health fails, or if you feel that you're not, good enough. And
so there's a consciousness, right? Like you're logically understanding the problem, but there's an emotional attachment to all the things you've made a commitment to already.
Yes,
Okay,
for sure.
so let me ask you another question. Did you ever disappoint your family, your parents?
Yes. Yeah. And in the interest of openness, when I got married. so so when I got married, it was not something that my parents were necessarily happy about.
Because they
Uh,
didn't like your choice or they didn't want you to get married?
no, it was more the choice of partner. And it was something that, they wanted me to be happy, but they weren't 100% on board. So I definitely always observe that, there's that intersection of your professional life and your personal life, and those triggers and sensitivities in your personal life kind of seeping into your professional life.
So you chose someone that your parents weren't a fan of, but you did it anyway.
Yeah.
How come?
I was young and in love and convinced that family, aligning with your personal choices was not that important. And in now at this point in my life, it's very much, it is important. Having that cohesiveness with your family is a big part of a happy marriage and a happy interpersonal relationship in your romantic life. So if you have that friction with your family and your romantic partner, it is difficult. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. And it is difficult to kind of enjoy your partner and your partnership. But what I've observed is, families usually want the best things for you. So if there's something that they sense about a partner, it's probably something to it.
Do they like your current partner?
They do. They do. So it makes it easier. And my son likes my current partner, which is great.
So how did you deal with it when your parents weren't on board?
We actually stopped speaking
For how
for
long?
about 2 years.
2 years. Did they come to your wedding?
No, they didn't. Well, actually, no. One of them did, and one of them didn't.
Okay.
They're my parents are divorced as well.
Okay. So here's what's very, very interesting, right? Like, so your background is such that you are wired to perform. You're wired for excellence. You're wired to be, you called it perfect. And it's in your DNA and it's endorsed by your family. Okay.
That would be true.
However, you also have it in you to be okay with doing what you think is right. Even
True.
if it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, you have it in you to go down a path that may potentially disappoint people you love.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to flip the dialogue a little bit. So you're and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds like you got a lot of fires burning, and it
Definitely.
sounds like it's a little too much. Yes?
I will admit I vacillate on that. So
Okay.
depending on the day, some days I say I've got it all together. It's completely under control. I'm superwoman. I can do it all. And then other days, maybe my son is not cooperating with virtual school, or maybe there's a board meeting and there's, a problem with logistics, and there's a problem with one of the apps we designed, or there's problems. And it's very much, hey, when everything is great, everything's great. But when one of those, proverbial balls that you're juggling drops, it's such a sense of disappointment in yourself that, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't, well, maybe this is too much.
Okay. So I mean, I'm hearing you and I understand exactly what you're saying. And I'd be curious to know, if your son was your age and you're now older and he was in the exact same boat as you, handling all these balls, would you say, hey, you got this, you're okay? Or would you say, it's okay to slow down? Or would you say, hey, like, why do you keep filling up your time? What happens when you're sitting quietly? Is that useful? Could it be useful? What would you say if the roles were reversed?
Mm-hmm.
Would you push him for excellence, or would it be okay to fail once in a while? What would
Oh,
your
oh,
approach
definitely.
be?
Definitely in the reverse. with my own child, I would say, and that's my parenting style, to say, listen, you should do your best. You should try to do as many things as makes you happy. But if it's causing stress, and if it's causing a sense of disappointment, or it's impacting your health, or you're not sleeping, or you're not getting enough time with your kids, or whatever adverse impact, I think, that's okay. My son's name is Ethan. I would say, that's okay. Take a second, take a beat. I do meditation and mindfulness meditation every day. And I do sense that it's interesting that you pointed out the juxtaposition between, okay, well, you want to be a perfectionist, but you're fully capable of saying no if you don't want to. So I do struggle with that contradictory nature, which I think many people do, saying, okay, well, what's good for other people is good for other people. And I certainly would advise them to do that. But it's very much about that self-care mechanism that I admit is being neglected.
Okay, so and on top of that, it sounds like you're more forgiving, you're more, I don't want to say lenient, but you're more open, you're easier, that's a good word, on your son than you are on yourself.
Oh, 100%.
So there are a few thoughts, okay? So one thought is, every time you take on something else, in your mind before saying yes, reverse the roles. If my son were in my shoes, what would I suggest? Okay, so that's thing number one. Thing number two is, ask yourself the following question. When I say yes, or when I fail to say no, what do I believe to be true? In other words, what does saying yes mean about me? And what does no mean about me? Saying no mean about me, right? What does it mean about me?
Mm-hmm.
And then ask yourself, are these beliefs actually true? Because, as you're describing yourself, you're like, hey, I am Wonder Woman. I can take things on. And if I say no, then am I really Wonder Woman?
Mm-hmm.
Am I giving up an opportunity? Am I passing something up? Am I really as strong as I want to be, as I want to feel, as I want to be seen? And so why am I saying this? Is because I think you have complete capacity to briefly put yourself in someone's shoes and give yourself advice from a different vantage point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're accessing that capacity currently. So your parents pushed you, and wonderful, great. You're a high achiever, super bright, super capable, but you continue to push for achievement as though something's missing. And so, I don't know, from my perspective, it's always good to grow. It's always good to learn. It's always good to develop with eagerness to grow, but not from a place of feeling not enough. So I would ask myself some questions. Why am I pushing so hard? What am I really after? What is missing? But also putting yourself in the shoes of, you're the parent of your son. Be your own parent, because perhaps your parents were awesome parents and they pushed you, but maybe a little too hard, because you're not parenting exactly like they are. Your values are a little bit different. So apply your values to yourself, because you're still applying their values to you.
I would agree with that statement. It's definitely that it's elucidating this feeling of inadequacy. So it's that, the attribution bias of, and I like what you said about, if I say no to a request or an opportunity or a board, whatever it is, another demand upon my time, I am inadequate because I should be able to do everything, which is a very unrealistic statement. There's only, from a rational scientific perspective, there's 24 hours in a day. There's only so much time. You need to sleep some of those hours. it's unrealistic to think that you could say yes to everything.
Well, let's say it was unrealistic, and let's say you could still say yes to everything. That's not what I'm really interested in. It's more like, here's another interesting dichotomy that I see. You're a person who needs a high degree of control. You want control, you like control. When things are not in your control, you don't feel good. That's clear, right? When something goes wrong, things go wrong, and you're like, that doesn't feel good. And so the greatest form of control is choosing things that align with your desires. Right now, you're not choosing. You're accepting whatever people give, whatever people put in your hand. You're like, okay, it's in my hands. I got to take it. And you're not choosing. And so the highest form of control is to choose what you're taking on, to choose how you feel, to choose how you think. And right now, you're at the mercy of everything that people give to you. All the shoulds. I should do an MBA. I should be an amazing homeschool mother. I should, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say I should, is the moment you've given up control. And I want to re-engage. Like, I want to hand you back control.
Mm-hmm.
And say, forget about what I should. What do I want? Because right now you're living all the shoulds. You're not necessarily living all the wants.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it begs the question, you said, what is missing? And I guess the larger question is, who are you trying to make happy? You're no longer trying to appease your parents, or, you're not 5 years old trying to get approval.
You're not consciously trying to appease your parents.
Maybe consciously so. a little bit, maybe consciously still. I don't know if you outgrow that desire to please your parents. Maybe not. But you, from an element of transference, maybe you transfer it to other individuals in your life and other dynamics in relationships to say, I want approval. It is, whether it is your own approval or the approval of other people, or that you define your self-value on how much. And it actually begs the question, which I have talked about with some of my friends, to say, is it that your value is only what you can do for other people? So if someone comes to me and says, oh, I want you to do X, you should do it. It will be great. It's great exposure for IDQ. You should do it. And I say, yes. Am I saying it because I want to feel valuable to them? Or am I saying it because, am I defining my own value on what I can do for others, or how I can get that approval mechanism?
And even if they're 100% right, that this would be a good thing for you to do, and it would be great exposure, it might still not be great for you right now.
I like the statement that you make, that it's right now is the crux of that statement. It might be good at another time, but just because it's not okay or it's not positive now doesn't mean it's not positive a year from now. So it's that fluidity of time, and saying, you know what, yes, I'd love to do that in the future, but I have a lot on my plate right now. And I admit I never say that. I will never, those words are so hard to come out of my mouth. If someone says, and people often ask me, just, Sarah, I think you have a lot on your plate, but can I ask for help, or can I ask for your investment of time? And they are cognizant. Even they say, I know you have a lot on your plate, but and if you can't, that's
Let's
okay.
try. Let's practice. I would love to. Unfortunately, now is not a good time for me.
I would love to. Unfortunately, now is not a good time for me.
Done.
Which is easy enough to say in this dynamic, because you're not asking for something.
But I did. I asked you to be on my podcast, and you said yes.
You did. And I said yes. And I think I will practice that. And I will practice just the mindfulness of, it's okay to say, it's not, this is too much right now. I would love to, but I am unable to right now, which doesn't mean I don't want to. It doesn't mean I'm not capable of. It means Not right now.
It means I am smart in making strategic choices. And when I make strategic choices, I focus on my path. I'm focusing on where I want to go. And that might be a detour that I'm not prepared to make right now. As a very successful business owner, my success depends on my focus. And the people who depend on me also depend on my focus.
Yeah, that is I struggled for a long time, I will admit, with getting a nanny in the past. And then when I finally committed to doing it, then COVID hit. So I couldn't really leverage that. And then there was always this sense of, oh, well, if I do hire a nanny, which I'm fortunate to be able to do, then I'm not a good mom, which is not the case. I mean, logically, I know that. But there was that little voice saying, oh, well, you can't handle it all by yourself. You can't, handle being like homeschooling, which is it's that erroneous assumption of a statement you're making about yourself that you would never want another person or your own child, but yet you'll do it with yourself because that's okay. But it's not okay.
But it's not okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really like what you said, Kim. I will practice that. I will make a commitment to try it tomorrow in one of my business meetings.
And then you can send me an email and let me know how it went. Only if you have time and only if you want to. But you don't have to, because if this is one more thing that takes you off track, don't do it.
Well, I like that. I like that idea that if you're on a path and you keep getting diverted and you keep taking from that, bucket of energy that is not limitless and infinite, then you hit the bottom eventually. And then what?
And then you can become angry, resentful, and mean.
Which I don't want to be.
Right. The last person you want to be angry, resentful, and mean with is your son.
Definitely.
So you need some stuff in your bucket for him.
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing so openly. It was awesome. I love your challenge. I heard myself in it many, many times over. I was a single mom for a while, and I totally get it in so many ways. So I really appreciate it. I hope you got some value from this conversation. For those of you who are listening, and if anyone has a challenge that you want to share on the podcast, please reach out to me. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. And if there's a challenge that you're not so comfortable sharing on the podcast, please reach out to me anyway. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. Sarah, thank you so, so much for being on this
podcast, Kim,
and sharing totally openly. I really, really loved it.
Thank you so much. I loved it too. I really, really appreciate the pointers you gave me.